Chapter 12, Calamitous Dragon, Part 2. If Twilight Sparkle ever had to step hoof in a sewer again in her life, it would be too soon. The only consolation this time was that she could finally see where she was going. Her candlelight spell floated lazily in the middle of the party, offering just enough light to help them navigate through the narrow tunnels. Strangled rays of moonlight barely shone through the grates up above, but the light it gave paled in comparison to even her dim spell. It was clear that ponies were never intended to use these tunnels for travel, and it amazed Twilight that the griffins had been able to for so long. Gertrude and Galahad led from the front of the group. Twilight stayed in the middle with her floating spell, and Lair guarded their rear. No pony spoke a word. Beneath the ground, the tremors only felt more ominous as the dragon moved somewhere above. Eventually, it released another howl, and it reverberated within the stone walls of the sewer system, filling the silence and making it seem as though it was all around them. The party stopped and covered their ears, waiting until the horrible sound faded away into the darkness before pressing forward again.
"My, what a dreadful beast,"
Lair whispered.
"Just be thankful it's up there and we are down here," Galahad said.
Even still, he couldn't shake the thought out of his head.
"Grady better know what he's doing," he added with a grunt.
"He does,"
Gertrude assured him with a nod.
"He won't do anything dumb."
A second passed as everyone cast her a curious glance.
"Well, okay, he won't do anything too dumb."
A chuckle came over the griffins, helping Twilight's spell chase away the suffocating darkness around them. The dragon howled again, as if in response, and the laughter quickly died down. Lair snorted, hoping to bring back the lightheartedness.
"You know, this reminds me of my last adventure through the sewers, although this is pleasantly more uneventful."
Galahad's interest was piqued, if only to take his mind off of the terrors above.
"Yeah? What happened last time?"
"Oh, not much good, I'm afraid,"
Lair reminisced, not quite fondly.
"The depths of the old undead burg. Not a place one would wish to find himself if unprepared. True, one might think it a pleasant break from the maddened hollows above. However, it boasts its own dangers as well, each corner teeming with sentient sludges and rodents of unusual size."
"Wait, how unusual are we talking?"
Gertrude asked.
"Do you mean like,
She held up a claw with her hand and internal talon outstretched, shrinking the space between.
Lair shook his head. "Nay, more akin to—"
He held his hands before his chest, palms facing each other. They started close to the size of an average rat, and Gertrude's eyes shrank as the space between his hands expanded, nearly to the size of his torso. She pulled her eyes away, staring into the darkness ahead, and suddenly she found herself very keen on every squeak and scuttle in the sewers around her.
"But worst of all was the beast that dwelled far beneath," he continued. "A dreadful dragon, or rather some twisted kin to them. I was summoned by a fellow adventurer to fight it, and I could hardly believe my eyes. 6 legs it had, each nearly twice my size. What we once thought to be its torso was actually its mouth, split down what would have been its diaphragm with a multitude of teeth longer and sharper than a longsword. Oh, and the sound it made when it howled. I had never—"
"Can we not talk about this now? Please?"
Twilight interjected with a squeak.
"Maybe when this is all behind us."
Lair noticed how much he was suddenly shaking, and with a blush, coughed dismissively into his fist.
Yes, of course, such stories are in poor taste at the moment, aren't they?"
"Hey, what's that?"
Galahad asked, pausing as they approached a corner in the maze. The others were quick to see it too. There was another light up ahead, just beyond the corner. They came to a halt and realized that the footsteps continued to echo through the tunnels without them. Someone was coming, and they were just around the corner. The warriors were frozen in place. Who else could have been down here at this hour? What were we to do? Past that bend was the only way forward. Did they need to retreat? Just as Galahad took a back step, the other party rounded the corner. It was the Manehattan Guard. There were 5 of them, all led by a stallion in a strange suit of armor. It was jet black, covering most of his form. From the blue light of the magical flame that hovered hauntingly next to him, Twilight could see intricate designs etched over all the many plates, most notably the crescent moon over his chest. His helmet obscured his face in shadows, but she could see the glint of his eyes hiding beneath it.
Well, well. What do we have here?
The dark stallion asked, taking another step closer to the warriors.
And here I thought that with all these tunnels and all the other teams, I wouldn't have the pleasure of finding you first. Looks like fortune is smiling upon me this moon.
Before they had a chance to ask, the stallion's helmet levitated from his head, and Twilight gasped. She recognized him. He was the unicorn from Meadow Grove, and by the look in his eyes, he hadn't forgotten her either.
What do you say, little mage? The stallion challenged. No room for tricks this time. Ready for round 2?
He took another step forward, his fellow guards tensing up behind him, and a wall of purple light erupted between the two parties. It reached from the floor to the ceiling, solidifying into a translucent barrier. So Lair glanced to his summoner, finding her staring with wide eyes at the enemy on the other side as she maintained her spell. The Manehattan guards fanned out behind their leader. The stallion smirked, and the mercy in his eyes Twilight remembered from long ago was nowhere to be found.
Impressive. Most unicorns would find it difficult creating a barrier as large as this one, and oftentimes when they do manage to make one, it's only for show and breaks at the slightest gust of wind.
He gave her a menacing look, and the ball of blue fire next to him began to grow.
Let's see if yours is up to snuff, shall we?
The fireball streaked forward, splashing against the barrier. There was an audible crack, and a web of fracture spread from the impact. Twilight winced, nearly falling as she struggled to keep her barrier up. On the other side, the stallion readied another spell.
That's it! We're doubling back! Galahad barked. Twilight, just focus on keeping that wall up as long as you can. Gertrude, try to carry her. She'll need all the strength she can save to buy us some time. So, Lair...
He launched himself into the air with his wings, careful not to hit the low ceiling. He brushed past the giant and gave him a nod.
Try to keep up with us.
So Lair stole one last glance at the enemy before turning around and chasing after his companions. He found himself yearning for his sword, or at the very least his shield. At the moment, he felt utterly helpless. True, he had with him his talisman, along with a wellspring of knowledge of miracles and prayers from his previous life in Astora, but he feared they would be of little use now, not if he wished to keep Twilight safe. They raced through the sewers in darkness, with naught but the faint trickles of moonlight and the griffin's intuition to guide them. As they ran, it seemed as though the tremors were only growing louder, and once more the dragon called, more deafening than ever. So Lair couldn't help but wonder, was it right on top of them? Did it know where they were? And was it following them in this labyrinth from above? Gertrude nearly dropped Twilight as she suddenly flinched in her claws. Unicorn massaged her temples with her hooves and looked to her friends.
They just broke through my barrier,
she said shakily.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hold out any longer. Hey, you did just fine,
Gertrude assured her, though the comfort in her tone was overpowered by the urgency.
Yeah, sometime is better than none, Galahad added. Did anyone get a good look at the other guards? Any Pegasi?
Just 2, I think.
Gertrude tried to rack her brain.
One of them might have been a Thestral. It was hard to tell in the dark.
Galahad grunted.
But if it was, it wouldn't have had a hard time seeing us.
He stole a look back, only to find the expected darkness waiting behind them. He knew Thestral eyes would be able to pierce through it, though.
There's an intersection up ahead. We'll make the right and head south, and hopefully we can find a grate to crawl out of. If there are more guards down here, we might have a better chance in the streets instead.
Gertrude let Twilight fall out of her grip, and the mare hit the ground running.
I don't get it. Why would they think to search down here?
Twilight asked.
I thought it was safe.
Isn't it obvious?
Galahad cast Gertrude a sideways glance and grumbled.
Someone squawked on us.
She frowned. The thought was unsettling, but she knew it had to be true.
Who could it have been?
What does it matter now? Probably some griffin locked up in Manehattan Penitentiary that thought he could use a prettier cell, and now we're paying for it.
The intersection came up, and the griffins banked to the right. Twilight and Lair were a half beat behind. Gertrude let out a labored sigh.
Gilda's going to freak when we show up late because of this.
Gilda's gonna freak if we get caught, Galahad countered. Right now it's better late than never when it comes to getting out of this city.
Hey, wait!
Twilight slid to a halt, the others following a moment after. Before they had a chance to ask about her sudden outburst, they found their answer further ahead. Another group of guards stood up ahead, blocking their path. Hey! Halt! In the name of the princess!
Drat! So much for that idea, Galahad thought to himself. Come on, if we turn back now, we might have time to...
He turned around, and the words quickly died in his throat. The first group of guards had caught up. Their only escape route was cut off. They were pinched. Nowhere left to run, the stallion in dark armor boasted, closing the distance. Nowhere you can hide. The griffins dropped back to the ground, and the warriors took their stances, a pair watching both ends. There were 11 guards total. They might have stood a chance tackling the 5 new ones, maybe getting away with a few scratches, but Galahad knew that the moment they tried, the other 6 would collapse on them. Their journey had only just begun, and now it felt like the entire mission had derailed and was slowly grinding to a halt. It was going to take a miracle to get out of this. It would be easier on all of us if you just give up now, the stallion continued. You're outnumbered and outmatched. There is no need to drag this out.
It'll be a cold moon in Tartarus before we just give up,
Gertrude snarled. The stallion snorted. Very well. Never let it be said that I'd never grant any pony their last wish. Guards, detain them. I'm ready for this operation to wrap up nice and... His voice trailed as thunder rolled throughout the sewers, and it was only getting louder. The tunnel shook harder than ever, like they were in the middle of an earthquake. Dust and grime shook loose from the ceiling. And then the world fell apart around them. With a sound like cannon fire, the ceiling collapsed just south of the warriors, a cloud of dust and debris spewing forth in its wake. It sounded like there was an avalanche just above them, and with the thick haze, Twilight couldn't prove her thoughts wrong. No pony moved as the cloud swallowed them whole. As the dust began to settle, Galahad was the first to call out.
Everyone! Everyone all right?
Yeah, I think so.
Gertrude answered next to him.
Lair and I are good too.
Twilight coughed. As the veil of dust lifted, Galahad could see her and the giant huddled closely together, the latter crouched low and massaging his own back. He must have tried to use himself as a shield.
What happened?
Galahad cleared his throat and looked up. Past the thick clouds, the mare in the moon looked down upon them in her silver light. Maybe he had her to thank for the miracle. Far behind them, another voice called out in the darkness. Guards, what's your status? Is every pony all right?
Maybe we shouldn't waste this chance while we still have it, Galahad thought. We got a new way out. Gertrude, help her out of here.
Gertrude was quick to react. Taking flight, she helped guide Twilight steadily up the mound of rubble to the streets above. As the mare crawled out, she hovered for a moment, looking back down to Galahad. He was still on the ground. Why hadn't he taken flight too? Their eyes met, and he gave her a brisk nod, sharing more than Gertrude ever needed to know. Her wings hesitated for a moment, but she quickly recovered, twisting around and flying out the pit before her heart could tell her otherwise. Lair was halfway up the rubble when he saw the interaction, and he paused, turning back to the griffin.
"And what of you, Galahad?" he asked somberly. "I've seen that self-destructive look in your eyes before. What are you planning?"
The griffin grit his teeth and looked away, hoping he wouldn't have to say it out loud.
These ponies aren't gonna give up on us, and they'll know we went up to the surface. I'm gonna buy you guys some time.
He glanced back to the giant and flexed his talons.
Get them while they're still in a daze.
Lair stood on the rubble, studying him silently. The silver haze cast down from the moon made it seem like the giant was engulfed in a heavenly light, but the shadows that stretched long over his face betrayed his thoughts. He stepped down to the sewer floor.
"Then we will fight them together,"
he said matter-of-factly. Galahad saw his strange talisman gripped tightly in his readied fist.
"I would not dare to think to leave a companion behind."
"Oh, no, you don't," the griffin growled, pointing a talon at Lair. "You're more important to this quest than me. You've been in more fights than me. Heck, you never said it, but I'd swear you're an honest-to-the-crown knight. Me? I'm a nobody. No fancy experience, no fancy bloodline. I'm just another griffin that sailed here to riot, so that's what I'm gonna do. You keep them safe. Keep Gertrude safe. You do that for me, and I'll do this for you."
There it was again, that scrutinous silence. Galahad wasn't going to wait for the answer he already knew.
"You make this worth it," he said as his wings lifted him up. "All of you."
Without giving Lair a chance to say another word, the griffin twisted in the air and disappeared into the haze and darkness. As Lair lingered, he heard the griffin's last battle cry.
"I hope you're all ready for this!"
As the sounds of battle began to rage in the distance, Lair steeled himself to turn around and climb. He was loath to admit it, but Galahad was right. He couldn't leave Twilight behind in her mission. He swore to her that he would help see it through. As much as he wished, he couldn't risk himself to save one soul in the stead of many.
"I swear to you, my friend, your wish shall be granted in full."
He found himself back in the strange streets of Manehattan at the end of his ascent. The dust had settled, the last of it barely higher than his feet now, but his summoner was nowhere to be seen.
"Oh, blast it,"
he cursed.
"Twilight! Twilight, where have you gone?"
He moved around the mountain of rubble lying in the street, hoping to find some sign of her around it. Why hadn't she stayed put? He held his talisman up to his lips and whispered nervously into it.
"Great Lords who delivered us from the dark, I beseech you, grant me guidance in these troubling times, for I have lost my way."
His fingers brushed against the crushed bricks as he felt his way around what must have been a collapsed building.
"Deliver me to those I have sworn to protect, that I might uphold my sacred oath."
His hand shifted a loose brick, causing more to cave in and reveal a dark cavern beneath. Curiosity dragged his attention, and he studied the hole closer. Deep within, a large reptilian eye stared back. The dragon growled hungrily.